Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to my first lecture recital. My name is Catherine, and I'm one of the DMA candidate for percussion performance. So today's topic that I have here is Korean traditional music and contemporary Western music, specifically focused on Jennifer Jolie's Tiny Dancer. And before we get to more information about how this piece works, I'd like to point a couple of the points why this research was significant for me. And first point is Tiny Dancer. I'm one of the commissioner for the composition project, and I'm also the very first Korean performer in this piece. And also because of how new this piece is, I'm the first researcher on this particular piece. And I will also mention about how Jennifer Jolie and I have been collaborating in her other works. And first of all, I would like to talk about how hard to access into learning Korean traditional music in United States collegiate level. So as you see, there are not many schools that offers information or having a course work as a curriculum courses in the United States regarding Korean traditional music compared to Afro-Cuban music or Caribbean music. That's literally it. Like mostly student associations would have Korean drumming club and academic courses. And one of the common things about these schools, they're more located in where more Korean people are living. Like for example, California and New York, like there are like Koreatown, and the more populations are there. And Kentucky, there's a Korean music expert, Donna Kwon, as a professor at University of Kentucky. That's why Kentucky also has Korean traditional music course. And I'm going to talk about how Korean traditional music notations are working because you're going to see a lot of this throughout this lecture recital. So the beat pattern in English, Korean word is named called 장단, and I'm going to use that word a lot as well. And the notation system that we use in Korean traditional music is named called 정간보. And on the left, that's the melodic notation. It's mixed with some Chinese letters and Korean letters. And it was invented by King Sejong in 1445. And King Sejong is also the person who invented Korean characters as a language. And this was the very first measurable notations in Asia. We used to learn music by ears from the teachers without anything notated. Or it could have been notated, however, we couldn't tell how long the notes are holding or the length nor the tempo because of there's no information about beats. So let's talk about how to read the 정간보. So we have here is rhythmic notation of 정간보, and each square consists of a beat. And there are some dotted line or thinner line that indicates a pulse. For example, in 4/4 measures in Western notation, that would be more like quarter, quarter, quarter. And thicker line is like a measure line. And as you see on the very left, we have a circle with a line on the middle. That means using both hands. And straight line means right hand. And the empty circle indicates the left hand. So on the top picture, we have Western notation of how 장단 works. And on the bottom of the slide, it's the traditional 정간보, which has the same rhythm. So there are some case studies that I'd like to briefly introduce. So it's not the first time that Korean traditional music was being used in Western music. And the first case is keeping the original melody and everything. And I'd like to introduce you guys the 경기야리랑. Once you guys hear it, you might be able to say, I've heard this. And here's why. You've played this in your symphony band before. So the 장단, the beat pattern that I'm using is 세마치 장단. It's the 3-beat pattern. And here I'd like to go through a little bit of instruments. So this hourglass drum is named called 장구. And that's the instrument I'm going to use for this song. Sorry for you walking with bare feet because I have to go here a lot. So I will show you 2 examples how it's been used in Western music. First one is orchestral version of the same arirang. It's Arirang Fantasy by Seungwon Choi. He is a North Korean composer, and I'm going to play the North Korean National Orchestra performing this. This piece actually was being introduced more popular to the Western side and also South Korea because of New York Phil's tour back in early 2000. And they performed exactly the same piece in North Korea. And this is how it goes. Okay, so that's the North Korean version. And okay, and next one we have is, as I mentioned, the band version. John Barnes Chance's variations on a Korean folk song. So John Barnes Chance wrote this as a Korean folk song because he only heard this music as a melody but never got to learn an information about what song exactly is this, because he heard this melody while he was in Korea as a variant of Korean War, which happened in between 1950 and 1953. He was part of the army band living in Korea. That's how he learned this music, and this is the introduction of this piece. So now everything makes sense. And the second case is using the Korean traditional music and then making it into a new genre, or borrowing the melody and then creating complete new music. So I'm going to use Tiger is Coming from Sugunga. Sugunga is like a one-person opera. It's like a monodrama. Eh, Um, and this Sugunga is a part of pansori. Pansori is a genre that consists of one drummer and one singer. And that singer has multiple roles as a storyteller, singing each character, and the drummer will give you the beat and also sometimes respond to the singer's parts. And this specific song has the 장단 of name called 언모리 장단. It consists of 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. And in Korean traditional music, it's not a usual beat pattern to use because usually it's easier to listen 1 2 3 4 or 1 2 3 1 2 3, not 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. And the reason that this specific 장단 was used in the song Tiger is Coming that I'm going to demonstrate is in ancient Korea, tiger was being considered as a spiritual creature. And those Amori 장단 was being used often when there are music that represents spiritual creature. And here is the translation of the song, The Tiger is Coming. And this time, I have this drum named called book. Book means drum, and this specific smaller drum is named called 소리복, for specifically for pansori. So as you heard, it's hard to find the comfortable pulse in the 10/8 Mori 장단 form. And in the next one, I'm going to introduce the Korean pop and Ninaichi. And the singers in this group, they're all Korean traditional vocalists. Was that the first one? I'd like to see a hand. The 범 내려온다, 범이 내려온다, or the pop band version. Wow, I see majority raising hand for the second one. Yeah, I agree. It's a little bit faster tempo in a pop band version. However, it's much easier to find the pulse as 범 내려온다 instead of 범 내려온다, 범이 내려온다, right? So, without further ado, I will introduce Jennifer Jolie to everyone. So, Jennifer Jolie is a fantastic friend of mine, and she is half Korean composer, and now she's also conducting. And she's currently teaching at Lehman College in New York. And on the bottom of the slide, you'll see 3 pieces, and those are one of her recent works that were inspired or using actual Korean music. On the very left, I have March, is written for symphonic bands, that was written in 2019. And on the middle, I have Protector of the East Sea, which is also for the bands, that was written last year. And it was actually commissioned by US Navy bands. And lastly, we have Tiny Dancer, that was written in 2022. So I will explain a little bit about the piece Tiny Dancer. So in 2022, leading by Emily Salgado, who is a percussionist, and it was a part of Well-Behaved Women Seldom Make History projects. So it was commissioning project for 4 female composers. Other 3 were Molly Joyce, Shruti Rajasekhar, and Juri So. So actually, we have 2 Korean composers. Great. So this Tiny Dancer was based on Jennifer watching samgomo performance in California. And I will read a little bit of the part of her program note. I was enthralled by the booms emanating from the trio of membranophones and the clacking of the wooden beaters. Because of this, I initially believed the samgomo was a musical work, not a dance. However, it is a dance. I remembered vividly how samgomo brought together the visual and the auditory in a manner I could never fully articulate. The performer's body made a sound, then danced in response to that sound, which led to the next strike of the drum. As the piece progressed, I began to anticipate sound not yet made simply by following the performance movements. So, what is samgomu? Let's talk about it. So, in Korean, sam means 3. Go is a Chinese Korean word for drum, and mu is also Korean Chinese character meaning dance. So 3 drum using a dance of using 3 drums. We do have a dance form that traditional dance form that uses drums. However, this one is developed in a contemporary time by Mebang Lee. She is the Korean traditional dancer, and she used the traditional drumming dance of Seungmu. Seungmu is a Buddhist monk's dance, and she premiered this dance in 1948. And this particular genre became copyrighted in 2018, which is pretty recent. And here is the little bit of the video example of her dance company. She has passed away already, but her dance company is still being active in the performance field. So yeah, and also just FYI, the melodic instrument you heard is not an oboe. It's similar to oboe, but not exactly the same. It's named called taepyeongso, which is traditional double reed instrument in Korea. And before I start talking about the analysis and performance guide on Tiny Dancer, so this is the Western notation of Jennifer Jolie's Tiny Dancer. It looks like a keyboard music, but it's more like pitch-based drums. And I will go through a little bit about how 삼고무 tempi and the 장단s were used that were affecting Jennifer's Tiny Dancer. So in Korean traditional music, there's no first movement, second movement, third movement, like first movement, allegro, adagio, presto. Everything is in a taka form. And within that one whole piece, we will use different 장단 and using some bridging tempo that leads to one after another. And in 삼고무, specifically, we use 엇머리 장단, which is the slow beat that I was demonstrating earlier, and I will go through that one more time. 자진머리 is faster, and then 동살풀이 장단 is quasi slow tempo that leads to the fastest, which is we call 휘머리 장단. And on the next, I have the word 발림. 발림 is a movement for the idle hand, because sometimes there are some patterns that I only use one hand, and instead of me staying idle like this, I also use the other motions as part of subdivision, and also it connects all the works to physical works together. So let me go through some beat patterns for you. So first one is 엇머리. And then next one is 자진머리. And in the next slide, it will be a little bit longer one. Oh, actually, let me walk through a little bit how these can be used in Jennifer's Tiny Dancer. So first one is 엇머리. The thing about Jennifer Jolie's Tiny Dancer is not exactly the same beat pattern that she was using, but she was inspired by all the 삼고무 music that she remembered. There was some research that could have done. Unfortunately, this was just written based on her memory. So in measure 64 in her music, it has similar groove, but in different time. And it sounds like this. In the 자진머리 is faster. So in this piece, there are some tempo changes, but everything is gradually, not subito changes. And next one is 동살풀이 that starts a little bit slower than 자진머리 that leads up to the fastest rhythm. So this one is actually very longer form, So I will go through the very basic pattern that a lot of Korean people learn at school. So this is the basic 동살풀이, and I'll play the excerpt of this up to leading to the faster tempo. Okay, so that was excerpt of 동살풀이. And there are in two sections that you can kind of understand how 동살풀이 was being used in Tiny Dancer. So first example is in measure 19. And then towards the end, the measure 146 is inspired by the faster bridge that goes to the fastest beat pattern. And it sounds like this. And this is one of those sections in Tiny Dancer that kind of creates that chaotic sound. And then last one is 휘머리 장단, which is the fastest beat pattern that was being used in 삼고무. And this is how it sounds like on a Korean drum. And I will demonstrate on Tiny Dancer that is inspired by 휘머리 장단. So as I mentioned earlier, that all the 삼고무 rhythms are not exactly matching in Tiny Dancer. However, she used the formation of tempo changing that is gradually happening. That's why it makes the most sense in this particular section because of it's towards the end of the music. So I was going through about how 삼고무 was being used, and there are some other Korean traditional things that you can find in Tiny Dancer. So this is measure 8 through 11, which I'm sure you've seen this kind of notation a lot in percussion solo instrument literature. In Korean traditional music, there's a genre name called samulori, which is for percussion quartet in a Korean traditional setup. And usually it opens with the drum player. Actually, this is much smaller drum, but because of only using one hand, we usually start slow and loud, and then as it gets fast, it gets softer like this. And then the rest of the group will start performing. However, it's a lot easier in Tiny Dancer because I don't have to use everything in one hand. I got two hands. And next one is in measure 95. And it actually appears again in other sections too. The melody that's lined is very similar to a Korean traditional song, Recital. It's a traditional song that was originated in the southern region in Korea. And the Korean song sounds like this. Before I run through all the entire Tiny Dancer, I'd like to talk about some performance guide that can be helpful for people who are not familiar with Korean traditional music. So first one, for percussionists, it's always important to consider what stick should we use. So to replicate samgomu, I used just regular drumsticks. However, I used the back of the sticks because in Korean traditional drumming, our sticks are not tapered. That's why I used the drumstick. And also, there's some experiment that I did between timbale sticks and back of the marching drumsticks. And I didn't really like the sound of it because with the marching sticks, it creates way too much of heaviness and it sounds way more aggressive, like this. In my work in like outdoor or very, that needs more projection. However, in a regular concert halls, I'm not sure if that would be the best one. And the next I tried was timbale sticks, which is much thinner than regular drumsticks. And for me, these sounded way too thin, and I thought that it was not the best choice, especially trying to replicate the Korean traditional drums that was not being used with plastic head. They're all animal skins. So instead of making like too thin sound, I think finding something in the middle was a good choice in this case. And the next one is about coordination. So as I mentioned earlier about the physical movement with idle hands, 발림, that can be also used in this case and also in general. Instead of having broken down movements, I think it's much more informed performance if you make sure all your movements are in fluidity moment. And also, as Jennifer Jolie mentioned, 삼고무 is a dance, so it makes sense. And next one is about tempo choice. So I know I mentioned this a few times about the tempo is gradually getting faster. So instead of choosing really fast rhythm because of the rhythm seems easy in the beginning of the music, finding a comfortable tempo that you can play from the beginning to the end in a smoother form is very important. And using resonance of the hall. So if you're a musician, not only just a percussionist, I'm sure you heard a lot about, hey, just wait. You don't have to count every beat. Just use the resonance. I believe it's the same case for this piece, particularly the very beginning of the piece and very end of the music. And especially in Korea, we have this term, 여백의 which means the beauty of blank space. It's very important in Korean traditional art. And here, this is the very opening of Tiny Dancer. And instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Using the resonance of the hall, and you can also build up the intensity as well. And before I play the entire music of Tiny Dancer, I'd like to mention some people I don't know if I could have done this without their help. So first of all, of course, my family in Korea is 1:40 a.m. over there. I know it's very late, and without them, especially my mother, without them, I can't be here. I can't imagine being here. And next, Jennifer Jolie, of course. I know she's watching in New York. We actually worked a lot together to help her to write the percussion part for Protector of the Sea that I mentioned that was being commissioned for US Navy Band. And I'm looking forward to work furthermore with her and representing our music from Korea. And of course, Prof. Dees and Dr. Weber for their guidance, and our dissertation committee professors, Dr. Beaton Bender, Dr. Largy, and Dr. Sly. Thank you all so much for making this project where it is now. And Professor Jean Lee for helping me getting all these drums and being able to use it. And also, we have a special guest, Dr. Nam-hee Lim. Thank you so much. She's the visiting researcher from University of Louisville in Kentucky. Dr. Lim also helped me so much for getting all the sources and understanding this whole project much better. And here is the whole piece of Jennifer Jolie's Tiny Dancer. And before I end this, thank you all so much for being here. Sorry, let me put my shoes real quick.